Wake up, samurai. We've got a city to burn. This is Juan Amiral from Gamer Braves, and today we're looking at the last big bang of 2020, with the release of the hotly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077. Seriously, this game's been making waves ever since it was first announced, and it's been delayed so often that people on Twitter get stressed out when they see the iconic yellow background. Just need to point out that this is a first impression, not a full review, so we won't be scoring the game at the end of this video. And a huge shout out to CD Projekt Red for hooking us up with the code. With that out of the way, let's get into the game.
Gamer Braves!
You play as V. What's V's backstory? Whatever you want it to be. Seriously, you can pick from one of 3 life stories, with V being either a nomad, a street kid, or worse, a corporal. The game's based on the Cyberpunk tabletop, so it immediately gets a free pass on any criticism about the cliché nature of its futuristic Japan hybrid art style. It's had this aesthetic long before they became the new mainstream for cool. So when I say it's based off the tabletop, it shows. This game is an RPG first and foremost. You can customize V to your liking with stat sheets, body types, the previously mentioned life story. This is the kind of game you're going to spend a lot of time in menus with. You've got dialogue options, perks, the works. Very much the story you want V to have, rather than a singular V story. It also incorporates one of the most important features for one of these RPGs to have, which is the ability to fail side quests. Look, some people will find it frustrating that they don't get a game over screen because they failed to walk their nan across the street. But to me, that's part of the RPG experience. Sometimes your hero just screws up, there's no shame in that. There's also Night City itself. You can tell a lot of long hours were pulled to make the city gorgeous in time. It's got a lot of that Japan hybrid so many Cyberpunk stories go for, and it looks great. It's also free of Sid Mead's influence, which is a bonus in my book. Look, the man is great, but not every futuristic story needs to be based on him or Blade Runner. In fact, I'd go so far as to say the game looks very much by 2020's design standards, but with the ideas of the original Cyberpunk. Characters have these creepy lines on their faces, and some of them will go straight on body horror with the augments. It's cool and timely in the sense that this is what you'd expect sci-fi artists in 2020 to be drawing. But back to Night City, it's full of NPCs doing stuff. And the fact that the game lets you see text boxes over NPC heads as they chatter is a great accessibility touch, since otherwise the bottom half of the screen would just be constantly full of chaff. You've also got a bunch of rides a la Grand Theft Auto, so you'll never have to be the mook hoofing it if you don't want to. With options like these, this is definitely the RPG to watch. And remember, this game's an RPG. Just because the game's in first person and has shooting elements doesn't mean it's a first person shooter. Which, is good. Because good god, the shooting in this game is pretty abysmal. The feedback is terrible, the enemies take way too much punishment before they go down, even if you're getting headshots. Now, there's any number of reasons for why the combat is so incredibly devoid of fun, but I like to place my blame largely on its tiered loot system. That's right, RPGs are no longer allowed to have actually good weapons anymore, not ever since the Diablo-colored loot got added. Guns don't really have any value, they're just sticks with stats on them, and they're not even good stats like New Vegas' math-heavy approach. You literally just want the big number with these. We haven't gone far enough to see how wildly legendaries will shake up the game, but suffice to say, for now this loot system feels tacked on and horrible, and serves no function other than to make shooting even more of a slog. There's stealth and melee options too, but the melee doesn't feel all that much better, other than the fact that this time you have a sword instead of a gun. And the problem with stealth is that, well, it's a very radically different way to play, meaning not everyone wants to play a stealth person. Seriously, after all the talk about Cyberpunk being the big RPG of the year, it's just a disappointment that the combat system is so uninspired. Since this is a first impression, we won't be scoring the game just yet. From what we've seen, Cyberpunk is at its strongest when it's doing its own thing, being an RPG inspired by a popular tabletop. However, the fact that the shooting, something that you do a lot of in this game, is so poor makes any second you're playing the game and not just living in Night City an absolute slog. Will legendary loot make it better? Probably not. But the setting is strong enough that you could probably get a strong story out of this. Cyberpunk 2077 is available on PC, PS4, Xbox One, as well as their next-gen counterparts. Thanks to CD Projekt Red for the code. This has been Juan Amiral from Gamer Braves. No, seriously, wake up samurai, you're late for school. Happy holidays, guys.